Hey everyone, it seems like AI is everywhere these days, and the world of education is definitely feeling the impact. So we wanted to take a deep dive into how artificial intelligence is changing the game for both students and educators. No matter if you're in school yourself, teaching in a classroom, or just curious about the future of learning, this deep dive is for you. We're going to cut through all the hype and explore what's really happening on the ground. So to kick things off, I was really struck by a recent study that found 82% of college students have used AI technologies. That's a pretty huge number.
Yeah, that is a really significant chunk of the student population. But what's interesting is that only 22% of faculty report using AI. So you've got this pretty big gap between students and the people who are teaching them.
That's fascinating. Why do you think that gap exists?
Well, one factor might be the job market. Research suggests that graduates with AI experience could have an advantage when they're applying for jobs. They may get more interview invitations or even land higher paying roles right out of the gate. So students are probably picking up on that and realizing that AI skills are going to be essential for their future careers.
That makes a lot of sense. Students are always thinking about their next steps. It reminds me of a story I read about a student named Anthony Gonzalez. He started using Pearson's AI study tools for his general chemistry class. And he said he felt so much more prepared for class quizzes and even exams. It's really cool to see how AI can make such a tangible difference for students.
It's not just about studying more effectively, though. AI is actually changing the way we think about learning in some pretty fundamental ways.
Yeah.
For example, some teachers are using AI to generate unique images, and then they're asking students to write stories based on those visuals. It's a really creative way to engage students, especially those who learn best through hands-on activities.
So it sounds like AI is not just about replacing textbooks with algorithms, it's about creating entirely new avenues for creativity and critical thinking.
Absolutely. And it's also pushing us to grapple with some really big questions about technology and its role in education. Like, for instance, there's a growing conversation about the ethical implications of using AI. Some courses now even include discussions about AI bias, the potential for misuse, and the importance of developing AI responsibly.
It seems like AI is forcing us to confront some really important issues, not just in the classroom, but in society as a whole. We can't just blindly embrace these tools without considering the potential downsides.
Exactly. And that's where critical thinking becomes so essential. I know one professor who actually encourages his students to question the answers they get from AI and to double-check that information against other sources. It's all about teaching students to be savvy consumers of information, whether it comes from a human or a machine.
It sounds like AI is prompting us to rethink what it even means to be an educated person in the 21st century. So beside those big picture questions, what are some other ways AI is changing the day-to-day learning experience for students?
Take interactive learning as an example. There are AI tools that can help students revise their writing, provide feedback on their work, and offer personalized guidance. That kind of real-time support can be super valuable for students who are working to improve their skills.
I can definitely see how helpful that would be, but it does make you wonder, where do we draw the line between legitimate learning and simply relying on AI to do the work for us? Is this just a more sophisticated form of cheating, or is it a valid way to enhance learning?
That's a really interesting question, and it's one that's being debated in classrooms and universities all around the world right now. And actually, that leads us perfectly into the next part of our conversation, where we're going to dig into some of the challenges and potential pitfalls of integrating AI into education.
I'm ready. Let's get into it. So we were just talking about this idea that AI could actually worsen those inequalities that already exist in education. I mean, how do we even begin to make sure that these tools are being used ethically and in a way that benefits all students?
Well, for starters, we have to remember that AI isn't a magic solution. You can't just throw technology at a problem and expect everything to magically get better. In fact, if we're not careful, AI could actually widen the gap between students who have resources and those who don't.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, if some students have access to fancy AI tools at home or in well-funded schools while others are left behind, that creates an unfair advantage from the very beginning.
Exactly. And it's not just about having the latest gadgets or software. It's also about having the digital literacy skills to use those tools effectively. If students aren't taught how to evaluate the information AI produces or how to think critically about its limitations, they could easily fall behind.
It's kind of like any other powerful tool, right? You need the right training and knowledge to use it safely and effectively. Otherwise, it can do more harm than good. So how do we equip both students and educators with the skills they need to navigate this whole new world of AI in education?
Well, professional development for teachers is going to be key. Educators need training not only on how to use the AI tools in the classroom, but also on how to address the ethical and pedagogical questions that come along with them.
Yeah, it's one thing to know how to use a piece of software, but it's a whole other thing to understand how to thoughtfully integrate it into your teaching.
Right? Teachers need to be able to ask themselves,
Mm.
how is this AI tool impacting my students' learning? Is it helping them to think critically, or is it just encouraging them to memorize facts? Is it reinforcing existing biases, or is it even creating new ones?
It sounds like AI is really forcing educators to step back and examine their roles in a whole new light. But I'm also curious about how students are feeling about all of this. Are they excited about the possibilities, or are they nervous about the implications?
I'd say it's probably a mix of both. Some students are definitely excited about what AI can do. They see it as a tool that can personalize their learning, make it more efficient, and maybe even make it more fun. But I'm sure there are also students who are more hesitant or even anxious about AI's role in their education.
I can imagine some students might feel like they're competing with a machine, or that their own skills and knowledge are somehow becoming less valuable. How do we address those concerns and make sure that all students feel comfortable and supported in this new AI-driven environment?
I think open communication and transparency are essential. We need to have honest conversations with students about both the potential benefits and the potential downsides of AI in education. And we need to involve them in decisions about how AI is used in their schools and classrooms.
It seems like even in a world that's becoming increasingly reliant on technology, that human element, the importance of connection, empathy, and ethical decision-making, those things are more important than ever.
Couldn't agree more. And speaking of ethical decision-making, one of the hottest topics in this whole debate is the issue of AI in academic integrity.
Yeah, that's the big one, isn't it? Is AI going to make it easier for students to cheat? Will it become harder to detect plagiarism? And is it even possible anymore to tell the difference between work that's been written by a student and work that's been generated by AI?
All valid questions. And to be honest, there aren't any easy answers. We're in uncharted territory here.
So where do we even begin? Do we try to ban AI tools altogether? Do we come up with stricter rules and punishments? Or do we need to completely rethink how we assess student learning?
Well, I think the first step is recognizing that those traditional methods of detecting cheating might not be enough anymore. Relying solely on plagiarism detection software or those online proctoring services. That might not cut it in a world where AI can create original content that's practically indistinguishable from human writing.
That's a little unsettling to think about. So what are some of the alternatives? How can we assess student learning in a way that's both authentic and fair in this new landscape?
Some educators are pushing for a move away from traditional exams and essays and towards things like project-based assessments, presentations, and more in-class discussions.
That makes sense. Those kinds of assessments tend to focus more on things like critical thinking, creativity, and communication skills, areas where humans still have a clear advantage over machines.
Exactly. And it's not just about changing the format of assessments. We also need to rethink the way we teach and learn in general.
So instead of trying to compete with AI, we should be focusing on how to harness its strengths and use it to enhance our own uniquely human abilities.
Exactly. AI can be a fantastic tool for supporting learning, but it's not a replacement for human intelligence, creativity, or judgment.
That's such an important distinction to make. And it leads us perfectly into the next part of our conversation. What does the future of education look like in a world where AI is becoming increasingly integrated into the learning process? What are the skills that will be most valuable for students to develop? And what will the role of educators be in this new landscape? Are you ready to explore some of these big questions?
Let's do it.
Okay, so we've talked about the challenges and the ethical stuff, but now I'm really curious about what the future actually holds for AI in education. Like, what does an AI-powered classroom even look like?
Well, it might be a lot more personalized than you'd expect. Imagine a world where AI can actually tailor individual learning pathways for each student, adjusting the content, even the teaching style based on each student's needs and how they're progressing. It's kind of like having a personal tutor for every single student, one that's constantly adapting to their strengths and weaknesses.
Wow, that sounds pretty incredible. It'd be amazing to see every student getting that kind of individualized attention and support. But in a scenario like that, what happens to the teacher? Are they still leading the class?
I think the role of the teacher would definitely shift. Instead of being the main source of information, they might become more like facilitators, mentors, and guides. They'd be curating those learning experiences, helping students make sense of all the information out there. and really focusing on developing those essential human skills like collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity.
Yeah, even with all this incredible technology, it seems like those human elements are still going to be so important.
Absolutely. And teachers will play a huge role in helping students develop a healthy and productive relationship with AI. It's about teaching them to view these tools as partners in learning, not as replacements for their own abilities.
So, as students are thinking about the future and preparing for the workforce, what are the skills that are going to be most valuable in a world where AI is everywhere?
Well, we've touched on some of them already. Things like critical thinking, creativity, problem solving. Those are skills that AI is still struggling to replicate. But it goes beyond that too. We need to foster adaptability, resilience, and a love of lifelong learning.
Hmm.
Because in a world that's changing so rapidly, the ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn is going to be absolutely essential.
So, it sounds like the future of learning is less about memorizing facts and figures and more about developing those skills and mindsets that will help us navigate a world that's constantly in flux.
Exactly. And that's where those uniquely human qualities,
Correct.
curiosity, ingenuity, and empathy, those are going to be the things that drive real progress and shape the future.
This has been such a fascinating conversation. We've covered so much ground from the current state of AI in education to the potential challenges and the exciting possibilities. Any final thoughts for our listeners before we wrap up?
As you continue to explore this world of AI in education, remember to embrace curiosity and critical thinking. Don't be afraid to ask questions, challenge assumptions, and really dig into the ethical considerations. The future of learning is something that we're all creating together, so stay informed, stay engaged, and most importantly, stay curious.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into AI in education. We hope you found it as thought-provoking as we did. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to some of the resources we mentioned. And we'll be back soon with another deep dive into a topic that's shaping our world. Until then, keep learning, keep exploring, and we'll see you next time.